Welcome. This video discusses R packages. We've been creating common data objects in R using some functions like the C function to create a vector, data.frame to create a data frame. Well, where do these functions come from? And we've also looked at some built-in objects like cars and iris. Where do those things come from? Well, whenever you load up R, whenever you open up RStudio, a few packages are loaded. And so what is a package? A package is just a collection of functions or objects or data sets around some theme or purpose. And so there's this default group of packages that are loaded whenever we start up R. And there are packages that exist to do basically anything that you could want. If you are in a particular field, maybe you do a lot of environmental research, and there's a particular type of plot that's used a lot in that kind of research. There's almost certainly a package in R that has code that will create that kind of plot for you. So you can find packages on CRAN's website. CRAN is the consortium for R something, but they are the people that maintain R and make sure that it's working and they update it and that kind of stuff. And so they have approved packages that have gone through their approval process and are available to be installed directly through R in RStudio. And then there are plenty of other packages in places like GitHub, and usually you can find more packages there because a lot of people don't want to go through the approval process themselves. But essentially, if there's some task that you want to do, there's probably an R package that's going to do what you want. So like I said, whenever you open up R or RStudio, a few packages are loaded by default. And you can actually see which packages you have loaded into your environment if you go up to your global environment area and you click on this little arrow right here. That arrow will then show you which packages and in which order those packages have been read in. So base here, this is the first package read in. Methods is the second, and so on and so forth. And so if you've loaded your own packages in, you'd see them at the top. And so again, these packages here that are automatically loaded, these are the packages that have the functions that we've been using in the objects that we've been using. The C function, the data.frame function, the list function. Those all exist in these packages that have already been loaded into R by default. So everything that we've done so far corresponds to what's called base R methods. So base R methods just means methods that come loaded into R by default. Now, there is a more modern way to do most of the things in R, and that's through what's called the tidyverse. So you may have heard of the tidyverse. This is a collection of R packages that share a common philosophy and are designed to work together. So the tidyverse by default has 8 packages, I believe, that it loads in, and all of these packages are meant to work together. So you can use functions from this package, and they're going to work with functions from this package. And they do all of the these packages have functions to do all of the common types of reading in data, data manipulations, plotting, analyses, and stuff that you would do. And so let's talk about how you would get these packages. How do I get access to the tidyverse? Well, the first time that you want to use a package, you need to do what's called install that package. So installing that package is really just downloading the files to your computer. So it's the process of finding them somewhere on the internet, whether it's on CRAN, whether it's on GitHub, whatever. You're finding them on the internet and you're actually pulling them down to your computer. And so there's a number of different ways to do this. You can type code into your console, install.packages, and then give the quoted string of the package name that you want. So a very famous package from the tidyverse is called dplyr. This is useful for doing most of the common data manipulation tasks that you would do. And so you just do install.packages, dplyr, and as long as you have an internet connection, it's going to go and try to download that from CRAN. Alternatively, you can go over here to the packages tab of that of this particular pane, and you can go through and you can see which packages are loaded. You can also install packages here as well and update them too. Now, you are only going to install packages once. You don't need to install them multiple times on your computer unless you update R. And so you only install them once, but to actually gain access to them within your particular R session, you need to run either library or require. Either is fine. One returns a warning if the package doesn't exist and one returns an error. But basically, we'll just use library all the time and just say library, whatever the package name we want is. And so I have a friend who teaches the same kind of stuff, and he likes to use this analogy that installing a package is like shopping for clothes. You're going to buy your clothes once, so you only need to install once. But each day that you want to wear those clothes, you need to put them on. And so doing library or require is the act of actually putting on your clothes, whereas installing the package is the act of going and buying the clothes. You don't need to buy the clothes every time you want to wear them, assuming you're going to reuse them. But every time that you do want to wear them, you need to run library or require. If you want to see all of the functions and objects that get read in whenever you bring in a particular package, you can run this command right here. So ls and then package, a single colon, and then the package name that you want. So if we read dplyr, again, this very famous package, these are all of the different functions and objects that get read in. Sometimes that can be useful to look at. If you want to call a if you want to call a function from a particular package without loading in all of the objects from that package, you can do that using a : operator. So double colon, not a single colon. And so this is really useful if you don't want to sort of clutter up your namespaces. So if you don't want to have too many functions and objects in your R environment, because you can sometimes get what are called masking issues. So for instance, in the base R, so this is from the stats package, this is part of base R, there's a function called filter. However, there's also a function called filter within dplyr. And so you have two functions that exist with the same exact name. How do you know which one you want to use? Well, by default, R is going to use the most recently loaded one. And so the order in which you load your packages is important. Stats is loaded within base R, so it's loaded whenever you start R. dplyr will be loaded after that. So the dplyr filter will be used by default if you've read in the dplyr package. But if you wanted to actually use that filter function from stats, what you need to do is instead use stats : filter, and that says from the stats package, call the filter function. So this is important to know about, and sometimes you'll see this. Some people like to use the double colon to explicitly call functions just to make sure that it's clear what package things are coming from. Let's jump into R and let's look at installing some packages, reading them in, and calling functions from them. All right, here we are in R Studio. We'll go ahead and continue that same program. We're just going to install a package. So one package that is useful for fitting random forests, if you've ever heard of random forests, is the random forest package. I think it's with a capital F. And so one way we can install that package is by using this code. Install.packages, sorry, I'm missing an S. Install.packages, and then give it the quoted string of the package that we want to install. If we send that to the console, it's going to contact, by default, usually it's a CRAN mirror, so a CRAN website, and it tries to download that package. And so here it says, hey, I downloaded that package and it's available to you now. It didn't give me any errors or warnings about how it installed, so that means that it probably installed correctly. If I want to gain access to the commands from this random forest package, I now can type library, and then that package should show up. I hit tab, fill it in. Now it's read in this library, random forests. You might notice here that it does say, ooh, hey, you've read in the dplyr package, and there's a function in dplyr called combine. This random forest package also has a function called combine, and it is masking that function. So by default now, if I use combine, it's going to come from random forest. Same thing with margin. If I use margin, by default, it's going to come from random forest. All right, how else can you install a package? You can go up to packages up here. And again, there's this install button. So if I'd rather install it this way, you can do that. So you can do random forest, and looks like there's a bunch of random forest extensions. So let's do explainer. And so usually you can just leave whatever's here as the default, and then you can do install dependencies to make sure that every package that this package depends on also gets installed. And so what that does, it actually just types that code down there for you. And so now it's going to install a bunch of dependencies as well. So it grabbed a whole bunch of packages there, installed them all. At the end, it doesn't say anything about non-zero exit status or anything like that. So things probably worked correctly. However, sometimes it will say something like, I can't install this package because it's in use. Please restart R. And so you do that, and it's still just every time it seems to say that. Sometimes you can clear out your environment and history and stuff like that, and it'll work. But another option is just to download the files yourself and install them from a local file instead of downloading them from CRAN. And usually that will overwrite and work fine. So let me just show you how to do that. We'll need to jump to a web browser here. And so let's go ahead and just try to download the random forest package, even though it installed correctly, just to show you the process. So if you just type in random forest package in R, and then you put in cran. So again, cran is the sort of default way that you download things. Type in something like that. Cran will have the same type of web page for every one of the packages. So package random forest cran, if you click on that, you can see here it has all the different information about it. It has the reference manual that you're required to make, all that kind of stuff. But then down here is where you can manually download the files and then install them from that file. And so I'm on a Windows computer, so I could do this randomforest.zip down here. And I'll just go ahead and save that file. It's going to save into my downloads. And now when I jump back into R, I can install packages. I'll show you the third way to do it, which is session. Tools, install package, Tools, install packages. And from here, instead of, and I guess it brings up that same menu as install, instead of clicking here and doing repository cran, you can click on this little drop down and say, I want to do it from a package archive file. So that's something that you have locally. And it says, hey, where is that thing? So I have it in my downloads folder here. I just double click on that .zip file. And it says, okay, I'm going to install that just like we did before, except now it's installing it not from cran, from this zip file. And I'll just hit install. Oh, so it does say it's in use and it can't be installed. So we'd have to restart our R session. So restart R up here. And so as long as you don't have your R environment being saved, when you restart R, sorry, let me slow down there, session, restart R, will restart R for you. And then if you go up to your environment, by default it shouldn't save things, but you can see I no longer have any of the packages read in that I had before. So now if I wanted to install it from this local source, I could do that by doing that same exact process as before. Browse for that file, find it, install it from that local file. And it says, hey, it successfully worked. So that's good. All right, and then the last thing I just wanted to again show you that idea that we can call a function from a particular package. And so notice again that I restarted my R, so I do not have the dplyr package in. I don't have that random forest package in either. All I've done is install that package. So I did not actually read it in. I can rerun this library random forest code though, and now I will have that showing up in my packages list. You will sometimes get warnings about the fact that this was built under a different R version. That's perfectly fine. There's generally no issues about that. They don't change behavior of R very much between versions unless it goes from like version 3 to version 4, that kind of thing. But now if I wanted to call the filter function from dplyr, even though I don't have dplyr loaded into my environment, I can still use that double bracket, the double colon, and say dplyr filter, and say, oh, I don't know, iris data frame, and just give me the sepal.length greater than 10 or greater than 1, something like that. And so it'll return just those observations. But again, we don't know about this function yet, but this is the way to call this filter function directly from the dplyr package. So that's the idea with R packages. They are this collection of functions or objects that are associated with something. And so this tidyverse is going to be the way that we're going to do our importing of data, the way that we do our manipulating and plotting of data going forward. And so if you haven't already, you'll probably want to do install.packages of the tidyverse. Remember that installing is downloading the files to your computer. Library is used to actually gain access to them once you have them installed. You only need to install once, but every time you run R, you need to run library.